Joining us now in studio, Tom Hamza. He is the president of the Investor Education Fund, and we're happy to welcome you to TVO.
Thank you.
We're going to talk financial literacy, but before we talk about it, we have to know what it means. When I say those two words to you, what do you take it to mean?
Financial literacy is the ability to not only know the basics of your personal finances, but be able to act on them and make decisions that are not based on other people's opinions, but on your own.
And the basics being?
The basics being things about information about savings, about investing, about dealing with credit, and the basic financial instruments that you'll use throughout your life.
Financial instruments being?
Things like credit cards.
You see how we're doing this? I'm not going to make any assumptions that anybody knows what we're talking about. So we're really going to, we're going to real financial literacy 101 this, okay?
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. But yeah, dialing it down to the things that people use every day. So if you need to, for instance, get a student loan, which is something that a lot of people start with without any knowledge at all. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. How do you best manage that? How do you pay it down? And so on and so on.
In your experience, what aspect of this world are people most illiterate about?
Well, certainly savings and debt are a major area that have implications that we can actually measure. So when you look at, we have lots of research about this issue, and whether it's the basic numeracy that people don't have. So for instance, what are the implications of interest over the long run? People aren't very good about that. But also, when you look at people's ability to even socially understand what the long-term implications are of, for instance, not saving. That's a big problem, and that's something that hasn't been handed down from generation to generation like it used to be.
That's why you say, pay yourself first.
Exactly.
Pay yourself, I mean, you hear that all the time, but it basically means what?
Basically, it makes sure that with every paycheck you get, you allocate automatically into a savings account so that money is not spent and cannot be spent for daily needs.
Even if it's $50 a month, something, right?
Absolutely.
Something.
We do a lot of work in high schools, and one of the things that we tell people is they actually have some of the best tools for investing that anybody has anywhere in society, and that's time. $50 a month over 40 or 50 years is a tremendous amount of money, and it puts you so far ahead.
Compound interest.
Absolutely.
Investor Education Fund, that's what you do. How long have you been around?
The fund itself has been around since 2000. It was established by the Ontario Securities Commission, and what they do and what they did at the time is they realized that they needed to have a source of unbiased, independent information. So it's fine if you want to find out about a mutual fund, you go to your bank typically, but how do you find out more? How do you assess, say, mutual funds or investments, that sort of thing? And they said, okay, let's take some of the funds that we get from settlements and from decisions that are made in the marketplace and apply it to education. And we've been doing that for 11 years now. So
in other words, if somebody runs afoul of the Ontario Securities Commission and they get fined, you get a chunk of that to keep yourselves going.
Precisely, or we get a chunk of that to basically fund financial education in the schools and amongst adults as well.
Sure. Okay. Let me put this to you. A recent survey from the British Columbia Securities Commission found that the average 17 to 20-year-old, so somebody who's sort of just finishing high school, going into university, expected their income to be about $90,000 annually by the time they turn 30. That is roughly 3 times the national average. Why do you think young people's expectations of what they're going to earn are so out of whack with what the reality is today in this country?
Well, I think people who are living at home with their parents and don't have any real expenses except perhaps a cell phone, perhaps some upcoming university expenses they're aware of. Some of them may have transportation expenses. We can't really expect them to know 100% of what their financial reality is going to be in the future. But the fact that we don't necessarily address it directly in schools has a big impact on that.
But let's start with parents. Mommy and Daddy are not doing their job, from what I hear you saying.
Well, there certainly is a cultural shift. I mean, how can you expect mom and dad to train their kids when they aren't saving themselves? And that's part of the conundrum, and that's why schools have to, that's why we have to have this in the education system, is that in 1990, the average family was saving 13%. Today, somewhere between 3 and 5. Like, that's not a change, that's a cultural shift.
And how do we stack up compared to the rest of the world in terms of how much we save?
Well, certainly compared to many of the emerging Asian powerhouses, we're way far behind. The problem is that you know, often we compare ourselves with the U.S. and the U.K. There's a really interesting stat that shows that we actually just met those countries in terms of our debt-to-income ratio. So the average family in Canada has about 150% of their annual income in debt. So that's a terrible number. It's gone up from about 80%.
What should it be?
Well, here's the interesting part of that, is that the US and the UK have just come down to 150%. Their trajectory is this way. Our trajectory is this way.
So we're going in the wrong direction.
We're going in the wrong direction, and amongst some of the most prolific debt-laden societies, we're going in the wrong direction. So we definitely have some issues.
I did read something about the Ontario government starting to include, from I think grade 4 to 12, financial literacy as part of the obligatory curriculum. Has that kicked in yet?
No, that's just kicking in. It started in September. So really, I think you're going to start to see it on the ground in 2012. And we were the co-chairs of that of the working group that came up with those recommendations, and that was good news. That was a part of a long-term sort of concerted lobbying effort with our partners to try to make that change. And frankly, that is the first part of the recognition of the issue, because it's, you know, you think there's 110,000 teachers in the school system. We have to teach those teachers. We have to teach over 1 million students as well about this. It's going to be a long-term change to get it in there, but we have the first step, which is recognition of the issue.
We know those teachers have an excellent pension plan, and so they do have a mindful eye to their own futures, but do you know whether or not they are qualified to teach financial planning advice to students?
Well, certainly financial planning, if we were, the way that it's been divided is grade 4 to 12. There's been elements that will be dropped into various courses. So in geography, there's an element, there's a history element, there's a math element. So at no point are we asking any of our teachers to become financial planners, because that would probably be too much. However, if in each of these courses we can give them material that's sort of contiguous to what they're teaching already, we know that math teachers are going to be teaching compounding of one form or another. So why don't we give them financial examples that build on what was just taught in history class before. If we can do it that way seamlessly, then we're going to have a positive effect at the end.
How old should a child be before he or she has his or her own bank account?
That's a great question, because there's obviously no solid answer. But I can say from the work that we did co-chairing that working group last year, is whereas our mandate was grade 4 to 12, when we were doing our research globally and talking to experts everywhere, they were basically saying start as early as possible. Start this in the curriculum in kindergarten if you can, which was a real eye-opener for us. We didn't expect to hear that, because we thought that would be really early. But their thinking is that that is when behaviors mold. That is at those very early stages, the earlier you can get people, the bigger impact you'll have.
So certainly, going by memory here now, grade 4, you're 9 years old. By 9 years old, you should have your own bank account. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's definitely a helpful thing. I mean, I don't think it necessarily determines, it's not a should or a shouldn't. It's definitely a positive factor, because presumably at that point you've got somewhere where you're storing whatever funds you have and you're able to manage them. Is that the answer? It may not be, but it's definitely a positive thing to have.
Well, let me follow up on this. How challenging is it to make this stuff, which most adults either don't want to think about or have trouble with, interesting for children?
You just hit on the nub of the issue, in that it is a challenging thing to make kids in grade 4, never mind in grade 9, 10, 11, interested in finances. At the same time, I think that there's a real opportunity that we've seen in a few programs that we've been involved in to not only raise it with teachers, but raise it with students in a way that makes them realize this is in fact a lubricant of society. This is something that affects my life directly. And if we can sort of step aside from the way that messages are usually delivered, we have a really, really strong opportunity to make those kids interested. And we just can't do it in a standard textbook rote way with standard written content.
Well, funny you should mention that, because I mean, we do the same thing here. We've got a website called Civics 101, where we try to make the basics of civic life in this province and country more available and accessible to people who are younger. And you do it by being funny. And you guys do it too. And we've got some video of that, so stand by. Roll tape, please.
Oh, how convenient. An ATM. I'll just whip out the old bank card and withdraw some cash. This ATM is not from my bank. At $2 each time, 10 uses a month is $20. I might as well throw out the window.
Any indication or feedback on whether that style works?
Absolutely. There's a couple of pieces of information that we have. We've obviously done, this is related, that cartoon was related to a speaking series that we have going to about 100,000 students in Canada, coast to coast. And we do pre and post testing. And basically what we do is we are setting comedians into the schools to communicate basic messages of savings, of cash flow and debt and long-term investment. And those three issues we test before and we test afterwards. And not immediately afterwards, like a minute afterwards, like about a week afterwards. And the take-up has been phenomenal because students are totally engaged. They're being not spoken at, but they're having a conversation with somebody who's a gifted communicator. They're laughing, so they're involved in the message. You could hear a pin drop there. He has their attention so rapt. And that before and after testing has been just an eye-opener on how much retention we can have on a topic that kids in not grade 4, but grade 11 and grade 12, how interested they are in this topic if it's presented properly.
Okay.
Similarly, the number of visits that we have on those cartoons and those videos, we've had 40,000 people visit them, and it's just circulating throughout schools.
Okay, so hopefully the next generation is going to figure this out. In the meantime, take our last minute here or so and talk to their parents. Their parents, as you pointed out earlier, their debts are going up like this, and we're hitting numbers that we shouldn't be hitting. You want to give them some advice on how to get out of debt?
Sure. Certainly, you have to start by being aware of the nature of you as a consumer and the fact that you have a lot of financial services products that are pointed in your direction. If you want an independent assessment of these things, go to getsmarteraboutmoney.ca. It's Ontario-centric. It's focused on all of the life stages that you're going to go through from basically high school up until our last days around. It's got everything from tools and calculators to information that's written in a very consumer-centric way that you can understand. It's not something that is an esoteric financial concept. This is the information that you need. When you go in to get a mortgage, these are the questions you need to ask. And these are the actions that you need to save yourself that, or if you're going to make investment decisions or credit or debt decisions. GetSmarterAboutMoney.ca really is one of the world's leading authorities on this on the internet, and it's certainly one of the most expansive sites you'll find. That's a great place to start.
Tom Hamza, President, Investor Education Fund. Thanks for coming into TVO tonight.
Thank you for having me.